How's it going, everyone? Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you again for joining me. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we are cranking up our anti China rhetoric to a new high. I've been warning about this the fact that the United States is looking forward to this next confrontation with China. And before we actually get there, there's that prelude where we just start to flush the entire mainstream media with articles about China. Members of our government get all fired up about certain things. And this is them building the case for, again, this future confrontation. And the same thing happened with Russia. Ever since 2016, Russia Gate, Russian collusion, the Steele dossier. This was the deep state building up for a future confrontation with Russia. And we're seeing the same thing here with China. And what's so sick about it is that it's contrived. They take something that's not that big a deal and they blow it up to level 10. So in this case, we have what appears to be, according to US intelligence, so we're taking their word for it, some sort of secret base in Cuba to spy on the United States. And this was an article in Politico. And anytime you have an issue that involves the military industrial complex or the national security state, it's going to be both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican together, pushing this stuff. And that's unfortunate. When they work together, that's bad news for Americans. So they say here, despite the administration initially saying the reporting was inaccurate, the two leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee released a joint statement Thursday in response to the news about this base. Um, the United States must respond to China's ongoing and brazen attacks on our national security. We must be clear that it would be unacceptable for China to establish an intelligence facility within 100 miles of Florida and the United States, and in an area also populated with key military installations and extensive maritime traffic. This is coming from Mark Warner and Marco Rubio, so Republican and Democrat together, calling out China for their unacceptable and brazen attacks on our national security. Now, of course, we, the United States, we have our Monroe Doctrine, meaning nobody messes with North America. That is the sphere of influence of the United States. So any foreign power, stay away. And of course, the granddaddy of our Monroe Doctrine was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1963. Um, of course, the Soviets have their nukes there, and that almost caused World War III. Now, what's funny about the Cuban Missile Crisis is that most people don't realize the resolution of this crisis was both sides being reasonable and making a concession. So we know that the Soviets did move the missiles, but what the American public didn't know for another 20 years was that we moved missiles from Turkey. It was a quid pro quo. Both sides were being reasonable and said, okay, we're going to de escalate, but both of us have to make a do something to show goodwill. So they moved the missiles from Cuba and we moved the missiles from Turkey. This was back when we had leaders who were not insane. They did not think that the United States could dictate to the Soviets and expect the Soviets to listen. They had to have a back and forth, and both sides had to be somewhat reasonable. But unfortunately, this has changed. The standard the United States set for other people is not the standard we set for ourselves. So we have this Monroe Doctrine. We're calling this base in Cuba a brazen attack on our national security. Yet, if we were to pull up a map of American military bases around Russia and China, we have both of those countries absolutely surrounded. And I'll add this as well. We're calling it a spy base, right? That's a very fancy word. Spy. It's a spy base, very aggressive. Um, we have in Taiwan the American Institute of Taiwan, which is a substitute for the American State Department because we don't officially recognize Taiwan, um, and thus being, we can actually call it a State Department. But we do have State Department officials there. We have U.S. Marines there guarding the Institute. And let me assure you 100% that in this institute, which is 100 miles from the Chinese coastline, we have the Central Intelligence Agency. Believe me, um, is it announced directly? No, but there are people operating within the American Institute in Taiwan who are members of Central Intelligence. And of course, we are monitoring China, doing our spying. It's what we do. It's what everybody does, every major power does. So we're in a tizzy because of this alleged base in Cuba, but we don't seem to have the same concern for other countries right to have something of a Monroe Doctrine, to not have the American empire operating right on their doorstep. So unfortunately, this looks like another escalation against China for some future confrontation. And what's so frustrating about this is that we saw this with Russia, 2016, Russian collusion, the Steele dossier. The Russians hacked the DNC. All these things that were created by U.S. intelligence that were, in the end, turned out to be false, completely contrived. So this entire, all this Russia phobia that we have in the United States right now is a creation of our media and of lies from the U.S. intelligence. From U.S. intelligence, it's not. It shouldn't be real. Russia is not a threat to the United States, and any action they took against us, because Russia, they spy too, right? Just like the Mossad, just like MI6, just like China. Everybody spies and plays their little games, but they weren't undermining our country the way that was presented by the media. Because again, this is the U.S. establishment building a case against Russia for a future confrontation, which we are seeing right now. And now they're doing the same thing with China. It's going to be just sad to see people all of a sudden say, oh, the Chinese, and then the Chinese will be the new enemy. And they will use stories like this, spy bases, spy balloons, all to churn up hatred for China. And then if someone like me says, maybe we're the ones being the jerks here. Oh, what are you, a G puppet? Are you a puppet of the Chinese? That's what they'll say. Predictable and played out, but they keep on doing it, and people still, to some extent, the public buy into this, this idea that we are under attack by these foreign powers. This is geopolitics. Everybody's involved in it: Russia, China, United States. But unfortunately, right now, of the three players, we are the dirtiest players in the game. We have double standards. We're hypocritical, and we're the ones creating the tension, creating the hostility. And then when another power like Russia, finally, after years and years of dealing with meddling on its border, threats of NATO expansion, overthrowing governments, NGOs, working in countries to undermine the government to help to install pro-Western governments. If they finally go, okay, enough's enough, we're going to react. Why? Look at these Russians being so aggressive. How dare they? What's wrong with them? This guy Putin's crazy. Same thing's going to happen with China. We're going to do all this nonsense. At some point, China might react. Oh my God, Xi Jinping, this guy is crazy. He's out of his mind. Is he sick? Is he terminally ill? Is he trying to cement his legacy by striking the United States or invading Taiwan? Whatever it might be. We're going to do the same exact thing. Everybody's crazy and irrational around the world. Everybody except the United States. 'Cause we're the good guys. Everything we do, we have good intentions, but sometimes, we get it wrong. We might get it wrong and kill 500,000 people, but we have the best intentions. Don't you believe me? Of course not. And much of the world is onto our game, and they're picking the global south, they're picking Russia, they're staying neutral, like India, and they're not coming along with the United States quite the way they used to do in the past. And that is all the fault of the United States and our geopolitical planners who are greedy and are unwilling to look at the world as a place that they don't own and that they share. And until we change that mindset and look at this planet as something we need to share and get along, we're going to have these wars, these confrontations. And if we're not careful, we're going to have a nuclear war and blow the whole damn thing up. And then we're all screwed. So that's my biggest concern, if we don't have leaders who are willing to be reasonable, be fair, and not look at geopolitics as a zero sum game. So we'll see. That's it for now. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.